This is Need for Speed Unbound. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here? Well, it is a full 4K resolution at 60 FPS with HDR support. And yeah, it actually looks really great. This is actually a current gen / I guess you'd say next gen looking experience that actually plays really well and visually is quite appealing. So this is a game that you could play with like a bit of a campaign story thing, which we'll talk about a bit more in a sec, or you can jump online and play with others in a 16-player multiplayer lobby that features crossplay and whatnot. So just to get the multiplayer out of the way, it's like a connected thing where you're able to jump in, play, and do a bunch of just random events. Keep in mind that you have to make a secondary character because for whatever reason your character is split off from single player and multiplayer, and then you get a car and then you go and you get some money and you go and do some online racing. So it's, you know, it's kind of a neat section. You might find that to be fun. You know, it kind of feels like sort of what I would almost expect this kind of racing game to have. So talking about the single player, the story stuff, this one's a bit of a strange thing. So, you know, obviously we've got a pretty realistic looking, you know, car, right? Realistic looking world. And then they've gone with like this anime cartoon aesthetic for like the characters, like my character, and then like you see these effects that pop up as you're driving and it's like little symbols, and I don't think you can actually turn that off, at least I haven't seen anything like that. So it's this weird blend of like a kind of serious tale story setup and then cartoony things that I think are a little bit focused more towards like the Gen Z audience, I guess. Yeah, that's, you know, a little bit for you. So if you're able to look past that, the visuals are actually, you know, again, pretty good. I think, you know, you barely notice any sort of pop-in unless you're looking in like the far distance. There are some areas where it's kind of like, you know, some parts of overpasses are kind of, you know, kind of popping in front of you, but for the most part, it looks really clean and really good. But anyways, like I was saying, it's this weird mix of like kind of a serious story, but without any sort of like actual structuring to it. So if you've played Need for Speed Heat, I would say this game plays very much like that. It's just like a bit of a step down storytelling wise, and I don't recall the Heat story being anything too magical. But from what I recall, or really understand while playing this game for numerous hours, is essentially you have it all, you're part of this shop, and then someone betrays you, and then you do a qualifier each week, and eventually a grand tournament. That's literally it. It's a calendar setup where you do day and night, and you do that for like several days. You make money, you get enough to do the qualifier, or get the specs to do the qualifier for your car, and then that's the week, and you qualify and you go on to the next week, and then there's little bits of story here or there. It's a very flimsy, poorly put together narrative with cringe-worthy dialogue. I was not really too impressed by it. It's kind of lackluster and feels really padded. Now, with that, the world is quite large. You know, it is a pretty big environment that you can go around in, and there's lots of different like safe houses you can unlock. There's different missions you can go and do, like races, street races, and everything. So, you know, there's a lot of activities that you can take part in. And like I said, there's some activities that are during the day. There are some activities that are available during the night. You'll have to at times evade the cops in order to, you know, kind of cash in. The cops aren't really anything too bright. There does seem to be an increase of them as you progress week on week, and then if you get like a higher pursuit level, obviously you're gonna have more people to deal with. But yeah, the cops aren't anything too impressive in this one. So it's basically something that plays like kind of almost like every single other Need for Speed, particularly similar to Heat. but it's just got that next gen shine, but at the same time a bit of a, I would say, almost a step back story wise and a step back kind of like police wise. The vehicles, you know, they handle well. You know, the silly little icons, you know, some people might like them, some won't. It's just like, it's just kind of another Need for Speed. And you know, there's lots of stuff to kind of do, like I was saying. So we got the open world. There's other activities too, like you could do, you know, like smashing little speed things, or you can do certain speed runs, or, you know, there's collectibles to find, a variety of different events. But it does also kind of feel very formulaic and repetitive. I mean, you're coming into a racing game probably not caring too much about the story. That's fair. But it would be nice if they put in a little bit of an effort to try to tell something interesting. It's like, oh no, they took all our stuff, we gotta start from the beginning, and then you kind of very slowly grind to get your way back up. And to me, it's just kind of tiring. Like, there's, you know, there's a good balance you can have between, like, giving you stuff and then sitting there and being like, you gotta grind, like, 5 hours this week, 5 hours next week. You'll slowly start to get better things. And it feels very kind of slow building in that regard. And therefore, it just kind of burned me out pretty fast. Because I'm like, if the story's not compelling and the dialogue is just so cringe, and the characters are so one-dimensional. It is unreal. Like, there's this manager, quote-unquote, lady that's, like, working with you, but you don't understand kind of really why. She's just kind of there being like, I got you a new thing to do, and blah, 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 and it's just really, really nonsensical, is the biggest thing that I'm trying to get across, is I just don't really understand, like, the motives, really, of the characters. There's one funny thing where it's like, there's a book in it called I Cry at Night, and it's got rainbows on it, because, you know, your best pal kind of, like, you know, screwed you over and everything like that, and it makes you sad. If anything, my character needs to move on. It's been so long. I'm sure he wants answers, but yeah, anyways. Yeah, moving past that, it's just like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel very exciting. Like, it looks good. It really does. You know, you look at the backdrop and you're like, wow, this is a really nice looking city. You know, it's quite detailed. There's decent trees. Some of the trees are pretty 2D in the backdrop. But you know, there's like rain that comes in. You know, the night feels a little different. There's lots of different races. It does feel a little repetitive for some of the racing options over time. You're kind of like, okay, I've done this and this and this and this area over and over and over again. But that's what I'm saying, is like, if you want a racing game and you like the Need for Speed formula, you're going to find that you get a good amount of game time out of this. You know, A, in the single player, and then B, going online if you want to. But if it's something where you're kind of like, I don't know, it is something that does come across as quite repetitive, and there's just not an interesting enough kind of connective tissue that makes you feel like you're really getting rewarded for doing this stuff, or that you're really, like, you know, kind of doing anything that sort of matters or really builds up to anything. It just kind of is like an outline that connects the little bits of story together. That's, you know, all the campaign of this really has going for it. There's, I think, the soundtrack some people might find decent. There's a bunch of different songs. Obviously, we got that turned off. And then there's the police presence increases too after you do certain races, and sometimes you gotta escape from the cops, and you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, you know, it feels like another entry in the series. It's not bad. It's not, like, insanely intense or mind-blowing. It's an okay, fine experience. Like, it's pretty solid. There is a setup where you choose, like, a bit of your difficulty, and then you might have to do, like, you'll have so many restarts, and it was annoying because I did the qualifier event, and I failed by, like, just a little bit, and then I had to go back a whole day and, like, redo some races. Well, not redo races, do some additional racing, and then go back to the qualifier after a while, and it just, like, kind of padded the time out a bit, which was, to me, a little kind of annoying. I was just kind of like, oh, why do we have to do this? And it's like, Yeah, I'm just gonna put that as a marker just so we have somewhere to drive to, and then I want to go and switch it to night so you can see that. But I just want to show off more of the city during the day so you can actually get an idea of the scope of things. It's a varied location. Like, you get, you know, open hills. I think you've been seeing that as I've been whipping through it. Heavy downtown. You know, it's got like a good range of different spots to it, which is nice. And the traffic, I think, is actually pretty well balanced. You know, like, there's actual cars on the road, but there's not too many cars where it's like I'm constantly smashing into cars, because nobody wants that in a racing game. You want it to feel like a city that's lived in, and, you know, people are part of it and stuff, but you don't want it to be like, oh, I can't move. So I think they balance that decently well in terms of just immersion. But it's hilarious that it's like, you know, this pretty detailed, good-looking environment. As long as you don't stop and actually look at any of the shops. And then you've got, like, you know, nice-looking cars, a range of different cars, and then you've got these cartoony people, these really cartoony, like, flares on things. It's weird. It honestly is. It's very, very weird. When it comes to your cars, obviously you can fine-tune them, you can customize them, you can improve them, you can change the coloring, you can change some of the funny effects, you could change, you know, all kinds of different things, and there's a variety of different cars you can get. But like I said, it takes quite a while to get to a point where you're actually, like, buying new vehicles, and, you know, like I said, the grindy feeling at the start, it really, really feels slow. Like I said, like, it's at a point where it was kind of like opening up, but that was like after 5 hours, it was finally getting to a point where I'm like, I got a decent car, not a great car, and it's like I don't have any money to buy another car, but I'm finally getting to a point where some of the races start paying out a little bit more, and it just felt so slow from trying to, like, work through the story. And then the story itself was just really, really light, nonsensical randomness that I don't think really provided anything exciting or enriching, and it was kind of like, I don't know, it was a weird sort of setup for this one, because like I said, I did actually quite enjoy Heat back in the day, and I wasn't like necessarily super blown away by it, but, you know, I thought it was okay, it was fine, and story was, you know, they tried something and everything like that. And with this one, it just feels like they were kind of like, we just need, I don't know, some kind of excuse as to why you've got to, you know, start from scratch and build your way up or whatever. They're like, oh, something gets stolen, something's taken, blah, 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 and that's kind of just like, let's just throw some, like, dialogue, some cringy bits, and, you know, that's our thing. So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I expect a little bit more. You know, I get that racing games don't have the most hardcore of narratives, but it would be nice to see one where it's like a little bit more of an effort. And I know they've tried over the years different things, but it's just kind of like, you get what I mean? It's just like, it seems like the bare minimum of loosely connected tissue to just kind of be like, it sort of works. And I do also want to talk about, like, some of the physics and stuff in this one. Like, you know, as I've been saying, environmentally, it looks really good, but you can also, like, break stuff. Sometimes things go, like, awkwardly flying and reconnecting and vanishing, but, like, for the most part, you can really just sort of mow down a lot of the stuff that you kind of, like, drive by. It's kind of really wild. Also seeing, like, the destructive bits on the vehicles is really quite impressive. You know, from, like, a technical standpoint, there's a lot to kind of like about this one. There's a lot to appreciate about it. I just wish there was something more kind of meteor, you know, sort of pushing it all together, if that makes sense. Because I like what they're going for, to a degree. I mean, I don't like the silly effects. I don't much care for the weird anime stuff, but, you know, it's a good racing world. It's got some cool flair to it. There's different things you're taking on. The day, the night, the police aspect of it. It's not a bad, you know, kind of foundation. It's just got some cool things, you know. So I think Need for Speed fans will, you know, kind of enjoy this. I think, you know, as general racing fans, you'll be like, oh, you know, this is cool. There's lots you can kind of buy. Oh, wow, lots of new cars, which is kind of awesome. Oh, now I got all the access to the fun vehicles, that's for sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they really limit you, and you gotta work over time to get some better toys. Oh, yeah. So you can see that once you finally start getting access to the cars, that's where the fun starts to really kick in, I would say. But yeah, that opening just needed to be a lot slower or a lot faster because it was just so slow, and then all this customization for your characters and stuff, and you know, all that and whatnot. So let's jump in and show off a little bit of the night, and that's what I'm saying is like kind of you go and you do your night racing, you go do your day racing, and then eventually you go do a big mission. And there's different things. It's not just like all racing. Sometimes you're doing like breaking stuff. Sometimes you're doing other challenge stuff. And oh wow, does this game load fast. Like you are just like in that open world. It is so nice, you know, to like basically have something that's really optimized for the platform. Like it actually does, you know, some little things here or there where you're like, oh, I don't like these effects and blah blah blah. But like, you know, the game is fully taking advantage of the next gen console, the current gen console. And that I appreciate because you get so few games that are actually trying to really showcase, you know, what these things can do. And it's nice to see a racing one kind of give you a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a taste of it. And yeah, I think the results are actually pretty decent from a technical standpoint. You know, there's more to it than just that. But if you are coming in, you want like an eye candy kind of like, you know, racing game. It looks good. It looks nice. Plays well. You know, performance-wise, it seems to be pretty great. I mean, I didn't really notice anything that stood out to me as having too many performance problems. I mean, I think there might have been an area or two where maybe it dips a little bit when crazy stuff's going on, but I don't know, it seemed pretty smooth. And that's kind of what I'm, you know, expecting and, you know, hoping for this kind of thing is one where it's like technically demanding, technically impressive, you know, something that's fun to play, but your mileage is going to vary based on your, you know, kind of interest in this sort of game. You know, do you like the Need for Speed series? Well, this is, you know, another entry. I don't know if it's going to be like one of those like most memorable entries in the series, but I think if you're a fan, you're going to find this to be okay. You know, like I said, it's a very solid sort of racing game. It's got a good amount of time to it. It's got some fun moments, but it can feel very sort of repetitive is the biggest thing, where it's like, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going here. But they did craft an impressive world. I think the art direction for the characters and stuff is going to be kind of questioned for a very, very long time, personally. And I don't know if we'll ever have like a definitive thoughts of things from people, but I think it was like a weird idea to kind of go for that and almost a little unnecessary. I also found that you were basically racing the same set of like characters over and over again, which was a little annoying. I was just like, okay, we raced against the same named person like, you know, 50 times. There's gotta be someone else you can, you know, put together. They're just anime things. It's not like you really need to hear them taunt you or anything, but I don't know. It's kind of what they were going for with it. So yeah, I think this one is okay. It's solid. It's got some moments of strength in terms of like, you know, visuals and stuff like that, and it's got some elements to it that are a bit weaker and a little less interesting, but I don't know. I think what you get out of this is really going to come down to... Wow, that was really bad. Come down to your interest in what, you know, how this experience is and what it has to offer. But yeah, day night, good luck racing out there with the need for speed.